What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. This is the series where I go into great detail with all of the stats as well as some excellent attachment combinations for every gun in Modern Warfare 2. And in today's episode, we're going to be moving on to the HCR 56 LMG, also known as the AUG HBAR. And starting it off as always, let's have a look at our damage profile. And with this gun, it's going to be a 3 to 5 shot kill, although in order to get a 3-shot kill up close, we do need to be hitting some upper torso shots. Now with this, you can either hit 1 upper torso shot combined with 2 torso shots, or 2 upper torso shots combined with limb shots. And honestly, that first case that I laid out, it's pretty common to mix 1 upper torso shot in with regular torso shots, as long as you're aiming center mass, which is where you should be aiming. Additionally, headshots are pretty much useless with this gun outside of long ranges, in which case 1 single headshot can reduce the number of shots to kill. And now let's move on to our rate of fire. And it's worth noting, unlike some of the other LMGs, there is no open bolt delay with this gun, so that's nice to see. And our rate of fire is 741 rounds per minute. What this means for our time to kill is our 3-shot time to kill is 162 milliseconds, which is very, very fast and competitive. Our 4-shot kill is noticeably slower, but still within the realm of being somewhat competitive, I'd say, at 243 milliseconds. And then our 5-shot time to kill potential is 324 milliseconds, which is honestly not bad for really long-range fights. After that, let's have a look at our bullet velocity, which is pretty standard for an LMG at 700 meters per second. That's also a great bullet velocity, so you generally shouldn't have to worry about that at all, at least in the 6v6 maps. Then let's have a look at our ranges, and as we can see here, our 3-shot kill potential range is about 25 meters, which is pretty solid for a 3-shot kill. Then our 4-shot kill potential extends out to 48 meters, and those two range values are generally going to cover most of the fights you'll find within the 6v6 maps. Beyond 48 meters though, you're guaranteed a 5-shot kill, even with limb shots. Next up, let's take a look at our hipfire, and we have very standard hipfire for LMGs, and that means you probably shouldn't be hipfiring unless you're essentially point blank range. After that, we'll have a look at our idle sway, which, as we can see here, there's definitely a decent amount of sway and movement while aiming down sight, and that's something you probably want to take care of with attachments, or at the very least, just be aware of in-game. And then let's get into our recoil. And as we can see here, this gun does have a fairly high magnitude of recoil. I'm firing just a 30-round recoil plot, and it kicks up a fair amount, but it doesn't really deviate too much side to side. There's a little bit of a zigzag as it kicks upward, but nothing too crazy. And it also follows the recoil path very nicely. It doesn't bounce away from that path a lot. And as a result, even though this vertical magnitude may be somewhat high, I still consider this to be quite an accurate gun because this recoil is very easy to control and predict. But next up, let's move on to our handling stats, and our aim down sight speed is actually pretty good for an LMG at 425 milliseconds, whereas our sprint out time is very standard for LMGs at 250 milliseconds for our standard sprint out time and 375 milliseconds for our tactical sprint out time. As for our reload add time, this is one of the fastest in the LMG category at 3.13 seconds, which is still very slow if you compare this to something like an assault rifle or an SMG, for instance, but it is quite fast for an LMG and for a 60-round magazine. So I do consider that to be an upside with this gun. And then finally, when it comes to the base stats of the HCR 56, let's have a look at our mobility. It's pretty much just slightly above average across the board for LMGs. It's definitely not an outlier by any means, and you're still generally going to be experiencing slow mobility, at least if you're using the standard magazine. And with that, that wraps it up for all of the base stats of the HCR 56. Now let's move on to some attachments, and we're going to start this off with barrels and how they impact our ranges. And it turns out of the 4 barrels that we have access to, all of them will reduce our ranges, but by varying degrees. None of them really destroy our range values by any means, but you do have to be aware of that 18-inch Bruin Gorilla, as well as the 686mm barrel. Both of those will give a noticeable reduction to our ranges. After that, let's have a look at how they impact our recoil, and you can see the first 2 barrels noticeably cut down on that vertical magnitude, which is really nice, so those ones very noticeably improve our recoil, whereas the 18-inch Bruin Gorilla doesn't really seem to have much of an effect at all on our recoil, whereas the final barrel definitely gives us a little bit more recoil. There's a little bit more randomness, a bit more deviation from the path, as well as a higher overall magnitude. And then finally, for our barrel attachments, let's have a look at how they impact our aim down sight speeds. And you can see the first barrel with the integrated suppressor gives us the worst aim down sight time at 485 milliseconds. The second one also harms our aim down sight speed, but not by as much as the first one. And then the final two barrels will both give us a slight improvement to our aim down sight speed. So that's the barrel attachments, but now I want to move into magazines, and this gun is pretty interesting when it comes to magazines. We actually have two choices for magazines that are smaller than the base magazine capacity at 60 rounds, and these both very noticeably improve our aim down sight speed, our movement speed, our sprint out time, and our reload time, and as a result, these are often really good choices with this gun if you're looking for a bit more versatility. On the flip side of that, if you want to increase your magazine capacity with a 100 round mag, it will be slowing down your aim down sight speed by quite a bit, up to 490 milliseconds. So there we go, that wraps it up for the important attachments I wanted to cover with this gun. Now let's get into some excellent attachment combinations, and the first one I've got for you guys is what I like to call my versatile aggression build, and this one I really like just because it suits my playstyle really well. With this, we're using the VLK laser 7mW, the armor piercing ammunition, the 30 round magazine, the Bruin STB 556 stock, and the Bruin Q900 grip. With this, we're really trying to make this into more of like an assault rifle LMG hybrid, and we managed to get our aim down sight speed all the way down to 340 milliseconds, which is a great improvement, although this would still be considered reasonably slow for an assault rifle, for instance, but very fast for an LMG. Our sprint out time is ridiculous at just 75 milliseconds for our standard sprint out time. This is actually faster than all of the SMGs in the game, which is very crazy. I don't know if this is a bug or something, but that's a crazy, crazy sprint out time for an LMG. Also, our base movement speed is improved by about 3.3%, which is a big increase for a base movement speed. And then our aim walking movement speed is increased by 27%, and that's a massive improvement. And you can actually strafe somewhat effectively in a gunfight now with this build. And with all of this in mind, you would think that this completely destroys our recoil, but our recoil is still very manageable. I'd say it's just very slightly worse than the base recoil, but it's still very easy to control and predict. I'm probably not going to be using this setup at extremely long ranges, but for the vast majority of gunfights you'll find within the 6v6 maps in this game, this gun is going to handle them no problem. So there we go, that's the first build I've got for you guys, and like I said, that's my preferred way of running this gun. Now I also wanted to share more of a long-range, typical LMG sort of a build. And with this, we are using the second Tread 40 muzzle, the FTAC Hornet 20-inch barrel, the VLK Laser 7mW, the Slimline Pro optic, and the Bruin Q900 grip. And with this, our aim down sight speed is a bit slower than the base at 460 milliseconds. This is fairly standard for an LMG. It's not really out of the ordinary, but it is very slow compared to assault rifles and SMGs, for instance. Our sprint out time is actually improved over the base, just a little bit, but this is now better than assault rifles. And most importantly, our recoil is definitely cut down by quite a large margin here. This is going to be very accurate, easy to control, even at extremely long ranges. And it also helps that we have a great bullet velocity with this gun in general. So this one is just a good LMG build that's designed to be treated like an LMG. You don't want to be sprinting around like crazy or anything. You generally want to be getting to good positions and locking down lanes. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for today's gun guide on the HCR 56. As for my thoughts on this gun, I really like it. I love the fact that you can make it sort of like an assault rifle LMG hybrid. That really appeals to me because I don't really like super slow LMGs. I much prefer moving around the map, being a bit aggressive, and this gun really allows for that, especially if you choose one of those smaller magazines. Now, at the same time, it's not the most forgiving gun out there. If you're hitting a lot of limb shots, you're not often going to be getting that 3-shot kill potential, and therefore you're going to get outgunned by a lot of things in the game. But as long as you can make sure you're mixing in one of those upper torso shots, or maybe two, then you should be just fine, and you'll be killing people very quickly. Now, of course, that is just my opinion on the HCR, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about this gun in the comments down below. And also, if you guys have missed any of the previous episodes, I will leave a link to the playlist in the description down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.